It's Easter Monday, a little bit bored, still on lockdown, and I thought I'd do a quick video on the Honda CT110, kind of hypothetically versus the Honda CT125. I think a lot of us now have seen the press images of that new bike, the CT125. Apparently it's going to be out this time, sometime this year in Japan. There's been no official confirmation of it ever coming to Europe or America. There's optimism that it will. I mean, personally, I'm slightly pessimistic. I'm not sure that Honda will have faith to bring it here. I think the fact that the Cub 125, the Super Cub 125, has been a bit of a flop, and from what I gather, some dealerships are no longer stocking it due to poor sales. Equally, the monkey bike has not really done as well as possibly they hoped. The Grom, the MSX 125, was a great success, but I think the last two bikes in Honda's small bike range have been less than successful. My reasons for thinking that is that I think Honda has just lost they've lost their edge, or they've lost reality or lost touch with what the market wants. The Cub 90 was so popular when it first came out because it was a good, practical, versatile, usable, affordable motorcycle for the masses. The Super Cub is an overpriced, over-chintzied Innova that's designed to appeal to retirees who've got fond memories of the original one. I don't think Honda ever intended to design a very usable real-world proposition for younger motorcyclists with the Super Cub. It was a cash grab, and I think quite rightly they got bitten in the arse and it didn't sell. So, tough luck Honda. I think what's interesting about the CT125 from my point of view, looking at the specs and some of the videos, it looks like at last Honda have tried to design something that's got a real world practical purpose, that's usable, that's versatile, and that you look at it and think, I could take that motorcycle anywhere. I could do something with that motorcycle, whether it's commuting or green laning or long distance travel. It excites me just in the same way it's exciting a lot of other people out there. There's a lot of buzz on the internet, and I think for Honda to equate the potential success of the CT125 with the slight failed success of the Super Cub would be missing the mood of the market. I think there's a real appetite for the CT125. My appetite stems from, I've got 9 Australian Poti bikes in the UK. I am an enthusiastic Postie bike rider and owner. This is Dorothy. This is a Postie bike that I rode from Sydney to London just over 10 years ago. So that was a 23,000 mile trip, 9 months, 18 countries. I bought this bike. It got 40,000 kilometres on it. It had been used by the Australian Postal Service. It did Sydney to London, needing cam chain, clutch plates and piston rings once I got to England. And then a few years later I took it New York to Alaska, and in Seattle it did need a one oversized rebore. Other than that, I've not changed any gaskets, wheel bearings, head bearings or anything. It's got 98,000 kilometres on it. It still runs well. It's still a bit knocky. Well, not knocky, the bottom end's fine, but maybe it needs a new top end. Possibly, but I can't see why you couldn't refurbish this and ride it back to Australia. I've also got Chloe, which is one of the 8 bikes that I led a group from Brisbane to Perth straight through the outback, so the Great Central Road, Oodnadatta, Strzelecki. So they were 8 bikes that survived the outback, some really grueling riding, and they were all shipped back to England. So, I really respect and admire the bike that Honda built back in, I guess these were children of the 60s and 70s. I know they carried on building the Postie up until, I think they still build it in small volume in Japan like this, but it's very much a 60s and 70s design. I think the way they built it to last, sturdy, durable, was it's an approach to motorcycle building that we don't really see as much these days. But when I look at the CT125, I think yes, that could be a modern incarnation. Looking at the specs, it's got a slightly longer wheelbase, so it's going to be a little bit more stable. Seat height's pretty much the same, ground clearance is the same, it's got the same twin shocks, same 17-inch spoked rims, which I like. It's got the same high level air intake, which I think is a good idea for wading through water. I've got another few list of things. Power wise, it's 1.2 brake horsepower more than the CT110, which is not a great deal, but having ridden the MSX125, you know, that engine's far punchier and peakier than in this. You know, this will struggle to sort of cruise at 40-45, but the Grom, the MSX125, will sort of do 55. So if that new CT125 could do 55 miles an hour, that solves or remedies a lot of the complaints that you would possibly have about the CT110, i.e. that it's that bit too slow. You know, if I could have done 55 miles an hour along there instead of 40 miles an hour, it would have been a slightly more pleasurable journey. So I think the engine's right. You know, 4-speed centrifugal clutch like on this. I think people take a little bit of time to get used to a centrifugal clutch, but once you get used to it, it's such a great solution to riding, especially adventure riding. You know, I would do many things with my left hand when I was riding. You'd be taking photos, or you'd be working your sat nav, all the things I guess you shouldn't be doing, but all the things that, you know, when you're travelling, you kind of, it's really useful to have that left hand free. It also looks to have a centre stand on the CT125, which I think is another great attribute to adventure travel. So if you get a puncture, it's easy to repair. Looking at it, it's also got the rear rack on the back, which is slightly bigger than on the CT110. So again, really good for long distance travel. It's got a little bit more torque. Weight-wise, on paper it looks, from what specs I can get on this, 30 kilos heavier, which I don't believe it will be 30 kilos heavier, because looking at what's involved in the bike or what constitutes the bike, I can't see how they could ever make an extra 30 kilos out of what they've got. So I think it just sort of suggests that, you know, curb weights or provided weights by manufacturers sometimes have to be taken with a little pinch of salt, because 30 kilos on top of this would make it quite heavy, and I just don't think it's going to be as heavy as those figures suggest. You know, on paper they've got it down at 120 kilos versus 90 on this, but is that 90 wet or is it 120 dry? We don't really know, but I certainly don't think it's going to feel much weightier than this. What I like about the CT110, 125, sorry, it's got electric start. You know, it's nice to have a kickstart, but sometimes electric starts are so much easier. Equally, fuel injection. One of the problems that I have with these bikes now they're back in the UK is the carburetors just fouling and just needing a, you know, strip down and a quick blast through with some carb cleaner. And equally on the Sydney to London trip, you know, you're going over altitude mountains, high altitude mountains, and obviously the carb's not getting enough oxygen in. And so fuel injection would remedy a lot of those issues that I've had. So I think fuel injection is a great thing. What else it's got? It's got a lockable seat, which I don't think is a bad idea to save anybody possibly potentially pinching your petrol. It's got a lockable toolbox on the back, which again I think is a good idea. It's also got the heel and toe gear shifter, which this has got, which I think is a good thing. It's got LED lights, which should hopefully improve the fact that these headlights are pretty terrible. It's got a digital dash, which are, you know, take it or leave it, I suppose, with that. Removable foot peg rubbers, which I think is a good thing. You know, these are a bit too squidgy. I mean, you're never really going to be stood up off-road riding on these. They work better sat down, but it would be nice to have a little bit more control through a metal-based foot peg rather than squidgy rubber as it is on these. Some people are going to question or criticise the CT125 for not having the high-low gearbox. I think, let's be realistic. You know, that was a great solution back then when engineers ruled the roost and they listened to what people needed, and people back then needed high-low gearbox. Now I just don't think it's cost effective for Honda even to consider doing a high-low gearbox on a bike like this. I see that they've increased the rear sprocket size compared to the Super Cub, so hopefully it should have enough chug to get up steep inclines. Obviously it's not a ground up new bike, it is a Super Cub with changes, and so yes, I think unfortunately the high-low gearbox is a little bit of a fantasy. I mean, it is a shame that Honda don't reflect on some of the nice touches that they used to do. I believe on the original CT90s when they came out in America, they had a quick release on the handlebar, so you could just ping open a lever and it could turn the handlebars flush with the frame, so you could mount it directly on the back of a moto. And I think, you know, those kind of touches are long gone, unfortunately. But I think, yes, so I think the CT125 as a modern incarnation of this could be very good. And it's actually possibly the first Honda that I've been excited about the launch of for quite a long time. I think they've excelled at mediocrity, Honda, in the last 10 years or so. They've made good bikes, but none of them have been class leading. None of them have been really innovative or exciting, to me at least. This is all personal. But the CT125, yes, I can see that as being a better version of a CT110. Will it be as durable? Could you do Sydney to Alaska, without any real issue? Possibly. Who knows? Knowing anything about modern Hondas, it'll have a NAF chain, so you'll have to switch the chain out pretty much straight away. But other than that, I can't see why a CT125 bought in Australia couldn't be ridden to Alaska without any real issue. It's a good engine. It's a really fuel economical engine. A 5.5 litre tank on the CT125 should take you, they reckon, say 300 kilometres, which seems a bit ambitious. I would say a good 220, 240 kilometres possibly, and I think that's a long enough range. So that's it. Honda, please look closely at the demand or the intrigue in this bike, especially in Western markets, and realise that there is a market for this bike if you bring it in. There's a market for it in a way that there was never going to be a market for that Super Cub. The chintzy Innova rebadged Super Cub was always going to be a flop, especially at £3,600. It wasn't good enough to capture the attention of those cash-rich buyers who wanted something vintage or retro, and nor was it cheap enough to really tantalise the younger rider. And it was too pastiche to tantalise the younger rider. They didn't want some naff, fake chrome on it, which is what they got. They just want a good, honest, sensible bike, which is why it's important that if Honda do bring this CT125, they don't highball it with a price. I think they will come in at 3.7, 3.8, and that's, it will sell 500 units. I think it'll sell 500 units to people who've got money, GS 1200s or something, and just want a small paddock bike. I think it'll sell to that type of market, but they need to get the price to the point at which it's accessible for your average 18-year-old lad who can ride a 125, he wants to do some trail riding, or he wants a bike that he can go to college on, carry stuff on, go away, pack a tent for the weekend and go off and camp. That's how you inspire a new generation of riders, and all the manufacturers have lost sight of the need to inspire a new generation of riders, and this CT125 is that bike that fits perfectly into the lifestyle of a young motorcyclist. Please, Honda, whatever you do, do not price this out of the park like you possibly will. If you don't, I think you could do, in the UK, because that's all I've got to go on, I think if you did this at 3,000, 3.2, I think you could do 1,500 units a year easily, and that's conservative given if it gains traction, which I think it will, because it looks good. It looks cool, it looks funky, it looks like something you want to ride. So there we go. Honda CT110 versus the CT125. I am certainly looking forward to that head-to-head. I have some great lanes down here in North Devon, which I can bash the CT125 along. I would also like to get it loaded up with some luggage and head down to Land's End, possibly in convoy with Dorothy, and see which is the best. Come on, Honda, give us a CT125. Come on. I know you marketing execs are probably sat there crunching numbers thinking it's not going to happen, and you're probably right, but have some faith. Have some faith. Cheers.